Absolutely. So, what we were going to do today was we were going to jump in. We were going to begin today's event with the five most common reasons or justifications you've most likely heard. Maybe you used them in the past, maybe you've been told them, you heard somebody else say them, but these are the most common reasons we know of when it comes to these marine parks holding captive wildlife like dolphins. And we wanted to go through them today to arm you with the facts, to help you with answers that you might be able to share yourselves with people that you know, to help influence and create change, and to really just set the record straight. So I think that we're going to start there. And we're going to jump in. I'm going to try and to get into character here, Kathy, as somebody that's really pro this, and then would love to hear your response, the kind of best answer that you can give us into response somebody with one of these common reasons. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Let's go.
Let's go. So the first one, yeah, I've definitely heard this one before. So I, really want to go to Discovery Cove in Orlando because it's a great family day out and it's educational for everybody, for me, for the kids. It's educational.
Yeah, this is a really common question or angle. I think we need to think about what it is that these venues are actually teaching us. So when you go to a dolphin show, you'll likely see a dolphin walking backwards on their tail, or jumping up to punch a beach ball, or pushing the train around on a snout on their snouts. Um, I saw one that had the dolphins pulling children around in a boat. Um, this isn't education, this is circus tricks performed by really highly intelligent animals, marine predators that should be hunting and foraging in the wild. And I think it's important to bear in mind that what we're actually teaching in this way, when we're seeing these kind of tricks, is that actually wild animals are there for our entertainment and should perform for us as tourists, which is completely obviously wrong. And when you go on a whale watching tour, you generally get a lot more information about their true nature. You can see them in their pods. It's normally talked through kind of the social bonds and the specific behaviors for the animals that you're seeing, which is obviously a much more educational experience than seeing a dolphin. Um, I saw a dolphin ballroom dancing with a trainer, which I just could not see any purpose of whatsoever. At a venue I went to this year as well, they were saying that the animals in their park were safe, and that actually the ocean was a dangerous place for the dolphins to be, which I found a very confusing message. Um, Obviously, the ocean, we have pollution, ship strikes, but these are things we should be fixing in the ocean rather than scooping the animals out and putting them in the perceived safety of a park. It just, yeah.
Yeah. So circus tricks, nothing educational to have from there. Pulling, ballroom dancing with a trainer, no educational value there at all. And it sounds that, I remember reading in the book How to Love Animals, which I really recommend to anybody, is they were talking very much in this space about what is it really teaching the kids about wildlife if you see a dolphin, if this is your only opportunity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's giving the completely wrong message.
Cool. Well, that was really good to know that insight. So thanks for sharing that. Let's jump on to number two. So this is definitely one I've seen on a couple of Facebook forums. And I know Gillian mentioned about SeaWorld. She said she'd explode if she heard one more person say that it was for conservation. So this is the second one is and one we hear quite a lot is I know these marine park attractions do invest in conservation and research, so surely they're a good thing. What would you say to that, Kathy?
Yeah, this is a really big one. Venues often say this because obviously visitors want to feel good about their day out. They generally visit these parks because they love animals. They're not going maliciously, they want to be helping the animals. So if they're told that it is part of a conservation or research experience, they're going to feel better about the day. Um, in
Mm.
fact, research shows that less than 5 to 10% of zoos, aquarium, dolphin area actually have substantial conservation programs. Um, and of those, the amount spent on those programs is often less than 1%. And this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. This is huge. So I think it's pretty clear that a lot of that money is for profit. These animals being exploited for entertainment, and not for conservation. Um, 80% of the dolphins in these venues are bottlenose dolphins, which aren't an endangered species, except for certain populations, but they're not in the parks. So they don't need a breeding program. Even if they did need a breeding program, they're blatantly never intended for release because they're separated from their mothers at an early age. So they've not even had the chance to learn those life skills that they would require if they were going to be released. So that is not the case, as well. SeaWorld, uh, if you look one, don't know if you know the new SeaWorld that's just opened in Abu Dhabi. Um, so the dolphins there were shipped from other SeaWorlds. So 24 dolphins were taken from North America to Abu Dhabi. One of those was one that they allegedly rescued. I don't know how you could argue that a rescue dolphin should find itself then flying to an entertainment venue in Abu Dhabi. It makes absolutely no sense. Um, in terms of research, there's a really good quote actually by Jack Cousteau, um, which is something I'm going to butcher it now because I won't remember it properly, but it's along the lines of um, there's as much use studying dolphins in captivity as there would be trying to study man by studying a prisoner in solitary confinement. I'll put it in the chat so that you can see what it actually says. But I think you get the gist. Like, it's just you're studying a captive animal, so you're not looking at natural behaviors anyway.
Absolutely. No, I do know the quote, and I would have butchered it up as well. But essentially, it is studying a human being in prison and just assuming that's all humans and that's all we can get from it. It is just the same with dolphins. It's just silly. I think that was really interesting. You mentioned there, Kathy, that you said less than 5% of zoos and marine parks invest in conservation and research, and then of profit, it's like less than 1%. So, I mean, we're talking tiny amounts. And this is a classic example of greenwashing, which one of the other ladies today is going to talk about. But this is an example of distracting you with words like conservation and research. But actually, if you dig a little deeper, strip a couple of layers back, you'll see that there's very little going on in this space. Okay, let's jump to the third one. The dolphins enjoy it, Kathy. They're smiling. They look like they're smiling to me.
Yeah,
What would you say to that?
the dolphin smile. I mean, it's been described as nature's greatest deception, and I think that's true. And it makes me really sad for dolphins that they're constantly misunderstood just because of the shape of their jaw, because that's all it is. It's the shape of the jawline. Um, I mean, just to sort of go dark for a moment, but even after a dolphin's died, it will still have that smile. It's not showing it's happy. That's us kind of projecting onto them. I mean, health-wise, captive dolphins are prone to stomach ulcers. They have teeth problems from chewing at the bars. They live in barren tanks. They're one of the most intelligent animals in the world, and they're in barren tanks with very little stimulation. Um, if you watch the shows, you'll see that they're performing for fish. They're not performing because they're having a lovely time. Very much you'll see them do a trick and then go straight over to the trainer to get their fish. I've even seen them nudging the bucket if they don't get their fish immediately. They're performing for reward, not because they're having great fun.
Sure. And that ties into the sort of starvation techniques. Is that right? There's sort of techniques they use to make them do it through food.
Yeah, that is so sometimes they will withhold food before a performance so that the there's more incentive for the animals to perform basically.
Sure. So yeah, stomach ulcers, teeth problems, injuries. It doesn't sound like they're having a great time. I remember when I saw a statistic. Well, they were mentioning around how hard the dolphins have to work. So if everybody can just imagine for a moment not having any break, any holiday, working 365 days a year. no annual leave, no bonuses, sometimes up to 4 performances a day with loud music. It's hard, it's just impossible to imagine to have to deal with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the smile, they're not smiling, it's part of their how they look anyway. It's our perception that that's a smile. All right, let's
Exactly.
jump into number 4. Okay, I want to visit Aqualand and Tenerife because it's one of the best ways these animals can be seen up close, and for my kids to see them up close and personal.
Mm, yeah. So what's actually heartbreaking? You mentioned Aqualand. What's heartbreaking about Aqualand is from the stands. If you're watching the show, you can actually see behind the sea, um, which is like I said before, it's a Whale Heritage Area. It's known and celebrated for the number of different species it has there, cetaceans, so whales and dolphins. A really exciting place to go while whale watching, and you're sitting in the stands watching uh, captive dolphins in essentially a pool performing circus tricks. So yeah, just because you mentioned Aqualand, but I think you're never going to beat seeing dolphins in the wild. Like once you've experienced wild dolphin watching, I think it's impossible to imagine how they could possibly thrive in captivity. They're doing their own natural behaviors. They're going wherever they want to go. It's actually an honor if you see them because, they've chosen to come out. They might choose to interact with the boat. They might not. It's entirely on their terms. Um, and that's not only teaching you much more about dolphins as a species, but it's a privilege. Like it's just the most magical thing because it feels so special. And I don't think that's comparable to seeing them in a show.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really good point you make about Aqualand, the proximity of the sea and wild dolphins literally within viewing distance of the park. How could that be the best way to see see the dolphins? So yeah, that's a really good one to share, a good example. Should we jump on to the final one?
Yeah.
The one we most commonly hear. And just before we jump onto the fifth one, Kathy, it might be useful for people to kind of have some numbers, because for some people visiting, they may think, well, it's obvious. Obviously, I wouldn't go and visit a park with captive dolphins. Maybe previously they had and they've changed, which is great. Maybe they're just at the beginning of their learning journey. But could you just give an idea of the numbers of people that are still visiting these kind of captive marine parks?
Yeah, so they're still hugely popular. There's so TUI Group, for example, profit from 25 venues. There's venues all over the world still. Millions of people are still visiting them. Like I said, we haven't had one here for 30 years, but uh, um, UK tourists regularly are visitors, particularly in Spain, like you said.
This is the fifth one. The trainers and park owners really care about the welfare of these animals.
Yeah, I think was there an image to go with this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so here um, we have in the yellow, it's the car park of SeaWorld, and in blue, I believe it's the Orca tank. And I think it's quite a nice analogy to show the priority of the parks. It's all about the visitors. The chlorine in the tank, that's about the visitors being able to have a clear view. The lack of obstruction, the lack of enrichment in the pools is so that visitors can really clearly see the animals. Um, the entire experience is targeted at the people visiting the park. Um, I don't doubt that trainers care for the animals. I'm sure they do. But I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the most outspoken critics of marine parks are ex dolphin trainers. And I've spoken to several who've spoken about how guilty they feel having been um, part of the industry and having kind of helped that industry go continue. And there's a really great quote. This one I have written down because it's longer and I won't be able to remember it. But it's from John Hargrove, who, if you've seen Blackfish, he does feature in Blackfish, and he used to be an orca trainer at SeaWorld. And he said, it would make my life so much easier if I could say the animals are thriving in captivity, living happy and enriched lives. Unfortunately, after all the years of experience that I've had, I saw the psychological and physical trauma that results from captivity. And that's from someone who has worked directly with the animals. Like I said, I'm sure they care about the animals. I'm sure that's why they go into it. But that's also the reason I think that some of the biggest advocates against dolphin captivity now are ex-trainers.
Yeah. Lots of travel businesses, lots of travel agents, and professionals here that want to do the right thing. And they really need some support in navigating and understanding who to align with. So, over to you to talk about this part.
Perfect, thanks. I'm going to whiz through because I'm aware that we're already running over time. So I just wanted to speak a little bit about the amazing travel brands that are doing right by wildlife, have amazing animal welfare policies, and are working really hard in the area of responsible tourism and sustainable travel. So there's a few up there that we've worked with, Intrepid and G Adventures. And if you haven't seen The Last Tourist, a film that was made by the founder of G Adventures, I'd definitely check that out as well. It's really interesting. It started as a short film and ended up being a whole documentary. It's well worth a watch. And responsible travel are really interesting because they, up until quite recently, they still sold elephant bathing. Um, and then over the year, they've done a really comprehensive research piece on whether it actually aligned with their values, and spoke to NGOs, spoke to elephant venue owners, loads of different stakeholders, and they've just recently stopped um, selling elephant bathing. And they've got a really interesting blog on their reasoning and the work they did in getting to that conclusion. So there's also obviously lots of companies that still aren't doing the right thing, and they're often big, big brands with a lot of kind of impact on public acceptability. So a few of them we've got here. They all sell dolphin venues. Jet2 don't sell elephant bathing, but I believe the rest do. Actually, I don't know about Travel Republic, but all of these ones sell elephant venues. Um, sorry, dolphin venues, not elephant venues. I'm going to speak a little bit about our TUI campaign, which we have been running for the last few years at World Animal Protection. Firstly, I wanted to cover why TUI. I've just listed a few different uh, companies that are still selling dolphin venues. But TUI are such a huge brand in the UK. They're a real brand with a kind of family, fun type image. They sell by a lot more dolphin venues than some of the other companies. They sell 25 venues, which is 400 dolphins. Uh, they're one of the biggest brands in Europe. So actually, a number of our European offices also run similar campaigns in their countries. And at World Travel Market last week, they mentioned um, there was a spokesperson from TUI who said that they're growing in the US and Canada as well. So they are huge. And this, using that kind of household brand and giving that public acceptability to dolphin swims and shows means that they're giving venues social license and economic incentive to continue breeding and using dolphins in performances. Uh, so they're also a really big member of ABTA. ABTA don't have a specific dolphin manual for guidance at the moment. So again, we're really keen that uh, TUI make that change and stop selling and promoting dolphin venues. So far, we've had 100,000 supporters in the UK support the campaign on our petition. We have contacted TUI staff, and we've got anonymous comments from staff saying that they are upset, disappointed that TUI is still profiting from dolphin venues, and the fact that they have to, they offer them, they have to sell them. We also asked young people, this was the first time we'd done this because we often hear that it's a family day out, it's family entertainment. So we asked young people what they thought, and we surveyed 1,500 8 to 16-year-olds, and 86% of them said they would rather see dolphins in the sea than in a captive dolphin venue. And they gave us some really great quotes as well. Things like, um, dolphins are too smart to be in cages. Uh, they shouldn't have to do silly things, and they should be with their friends. I think those were my favorite ones. So we sent the staff comments, we sent the petition, we've sent the young people's comments to the CEO of TUI, to the sustainability team, um, and they're still not willing to stop selling dolphin entertainment. So at the end, I'll come back and explain, uh, which Rebecca's already alluded to, a action that we'd love you all to take. You're in a really great position to make a change. So we're gonna, I'll pop back later and explain how, but yeah, you'll have to wait till the end for that. So back over to Rebecca. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. That was so super useful to see those brands that are doing the right things and the brands that are still failing wildlife even to this day, despite all your incredible campaigning. So the No Thanks TUI campaign is a really cool campaign that some of the Quano ambassadors got behind, and Kathy's still running, that you can get involved in. But definitely stay until the end, because this action that we're giving you the opportunity to be part of has never been seen before within the tourism sector, and you have the opportunity to be part of this, to really stand up for wildlife. So stay until the end to be able to find out what that is all about. Before we hear from our guest speaker, Holly Tuppen, Julie and Marie, who are both experienced travel professionals and business owners, are going to share their stories with you. Don't forget to keep adding your questions in the chat, as we do have a Q&A at the very end. So welcome to the virtual stage, Julie.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. My name's Julie. I'm based in North Yorkshire, and I've been running my travel agency continuously for 9 years. And this afternoon, I'd just like to share with you a little bit of my wildlife tourism journey. So, in the past, I've actually visited captive marine parks and I've ridden elephants. And I'm not saying that because I'm proud of it. In fact, quite the opposite. I literally feel guilt over those things. The reason I'm telling you is to reassure you that none of us presenters that are here today are here to make you feel judged or like we're wagging a finger over the choices that you might have made in the past. We've all made choices over wildlife tourism that we really wish we hadn't. But we simply don't know what we don't know. And until we do know, we don't have those facts to make us want to make a more informed choice. So, wherever you find yourself today, this event is really designed to empower you. We are here to inspire you that regardless of any past decisions that you've made, you can make different ones in future, just like many of us have, and just like I'm sure many of you already have. We're here to share the facts so that you can make up your own minds over what feels right for you with regards to wildlife tourism. And I know certainly for me, moving from that place of ignorance to a feeling of being empowered was possible through gaining knowledge. And some of that knowledge was gained through an online course that I did, Rebecca's course, and through some other sustainability training as well. And that gave me more insight into the reality of wildlife tourism, both the good and the bad aspects. And it helped me to make more informed choices so that I could then take the next steps within my own business. So I then wrote an animal welfare policy, which is publicly shared on my website and in other places. And that is a living, working document. I look at it regularly, I update it regularly. And part of that is that I actually refuse now to sell any unethical animal experiences. And if a customer asks me why, I explain the facts. They always take it well, and they actually thank me for bringing it to their attention. And another thing that I've also done as a result of the course that I did with Rebecca is I've written a book about responsible wildlife tourism to help inform other people all about it and about the alternative choices that they could make, which are more ethical choices. And I really do believe that learning from our mistakes is the best form of learning. So today, I hope that everyone manages to learn something and that you're able to feel as though you can turn any negatives into positives as a result of this experience. Thank you all for listening, and I'm going to hand you over to Marie.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everyone. I'm Marie Rowe. I've been running my travel agency business in Berkshire for nearly 8 years. And in the last year, I've been especially dedicated to building a more sustainable business. And when I first engaged with Rebecca earlier this year and took her sustainable travel masterclass, my biggest drivers were fear of being out of my depth and fear of being left behind. So you'll hear quite a few people today use the expression, you don't know what you don't know. Well, it turned out that there was a lot that I didn't know. And the gaps in my knowledge left me a likely victim of greenwashing. That is, tactical marketing strategies designed to distract me from looking at the truth behind animal attraction providers that spend more money on fancy marketing campaigns than they spend on doing good. So, today I want to briefly talk about avoiding greenwashing and getting ahead of the game, because greenwashing is rife in the tourism industry. But rather than fear it, we can get savvy. And as travel agents, we can learn to spot the misinformation that is often used to entice an aspiring, responsible consumer or travel agent like us, so as we don't become victims of the greenwash. As the heat increases on these attractions, they are pushing back with more and more greenwashing techniques. And that is why cruel experiences are being sold as educational and conservation focused. As a travel business owner, I see two choices: get in the know today or get left behind. Marine parks are already losing their attraction and visitor numbers are plummeting. Countries including Chile, Costa Rica, and Croatia, to name a few, have already banned the captive display of marine life. TripAdvisor and Virgin Holidays stopped selling these cruel attractions back in 2019, and Expedia have now stopped too. So, if there's one thing I really recommend you do, as Rebecca and Catherine already mentioned, is to watch a documentary on Netflix called Blackfish. And my second bit of advice to you all here today is to ask questions out loud. They are not stupid or offensive or controversial. Whatever you're thinking, I've thought it too. Just say it. It really is the best way to learn. And that's all from me. So I'm going to pass you back to Rebecca.
Both incredible stories of transformation. They are so passionate about standing up for wildlife and just running incredibly exciting travel businesses that are really making a change, raising awareness, and helping their clients to better understand how to have more conscious and responsible travel experiences. So thank you to them both. So really quick mention before we continue the event today. And our next guest, which will be Holly Tuppen. So today we're focused on animal welfare. We're talking about wildlife tourism. And it's a really key element within the scope of sustainable travel. But this is just one aspect that you need to be in the know about. From community-based tourism to climate injustice to tourism leakage, how confident are you in your ability to have healthy and honest conversations about sustainable travel? How confident are you to ask the questions that need to be asked? And do you feel like you'd like to evolve your understanding on how to differentiate your business? If you would like to expand and grow your understanding, not just of wildlife tourism, but of sustainable travel, and have the tools in order to take meaningful action. So let's get back to our next guest. She is a published author, a travel writer, researcher. So I've got something in my throat there, and sustainability expert. Holly has traveled the world without boarding a single flight. Pretty impressive. And that was long before the BBC series Celebrity Race Across the World was doing it. Holly really has been this shining light on travel as a force for good for over a decade. She's written publications including The Guardian, The Times, and she's been working with leading industry bodies like The Long Run. And it is my greatest pleasure to welcome you to the virtual stage, Holly. And I think we're going to start with a quick video to kind of set the tone of what we're going to talk about and the solutions we're going to talk about. So we'll start there. many travel businesses here today, Holly, that are aspiring to be more responsible. They're keen to be offering more sustainable travel choices to their clients. And as you know very well, sustainable travel encompasses, community-based tourism, avoiding hotspots, voting with our wallets when we think about where we're staying. Could you just give us a little bit of insight into your own thoughts on why standing up for wildlife and really thinking about wildlife tourism is such a key element within sustainable travel?
Yeah, sure. And I think it's a really great question to kind of, ask ourselves why are we bothering? And I really loved Kathy's last comment about the parks catering more for visitors than the animals. And I thought that car park to tank was such a great analogy actually for what we're trying to achieve in sustainable travel overall. So kind of zooming back, I guess traveling sustainably is really about aspiring to improve places for people and nature. And when done well, tourism can be this incredible vehicle to fund that, particularly for funding the regeneration and protection of wildlife and the landscapes and habitats in which they live. It also helps to support jobs that do more good than harm, both socially and environmentally. So it's really exciting that we all work in this industry that can have such positive impact. However, when done badly, it can really be very extractive very quickly. And I think the parks is a good example of that. It's damaging natural resources through construction or pollution, damaging local lives through over tourism. And it can also be quite greedy. The profits can go to a few international businesses rather than being kind of spreading the benefit within the local areas in which the tourists are visiting. And I think when we think about these captive experiences, they often sadly fall into that latter category. So we kind of wanted to tip the scales in responsible wildlife experiences and think, how can we curate these incredible experiences that are still accessible to lots of people, but benefit local people and benefit the wildlife and help to combat our bigger issues at play, which is the climate and biodiversity crisis, which we're all aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really good point you mentioned about, how is that money being created in these parks feeding through to the communities, and what good is it doing for the natural areas and for the people that it surrounds? So, that was a really good point. Really keen to hear your advice, Holly, to the travel professionals, businesses, business owners, travel agents who are all listening today, who either didn't know the situation of Jet2 Holidays or TUI or some of the other brands that we mentioned still profiting from captive wildlife. What is your advice of people that either still work with them or currently book with them? How better do we navigate this?
Yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? And I think it's really, I loved what Julie said, that, you have to realize that there's no time or space for kind of judgment or criticism. And as an industry, I think we're all being much more supportive and trying to get everyone on kind of a more positive journey rather than kind of pointing the finger. I think also change is really, really difficult as a business, but the most important thing is really to think, if there's something that you think ultimately doesn't align with your values and you're increasingly feeling awkward selling it, then that really you need to make the change. And I think this isn't only true from a kind of protecting wildlife or sustainability perspective, but also travel is often about human connection, and the way in which we sell and curate experiences is all about authenticity and connection. So ultimately, if people are selling things that they don't believe in, I think that will eventually kind of catch up with their business and with their brand. So it's important that you're kind of 100% aligned with things that you're selling. I also think, it's already been mentioned, but I think one of the best things we can all do is ask those questions and also make comments directly to the people or brands or businesses that we're struggling with. So if you do sell Jet2 Holidays or TUI and you've listened to this and you now feel awkward doing that, I would say the first thing to do is to go to your contact at those companies and really be very honest and transparent and say, look, this is what I've heard. This is going to make it difficult for me to sell it. I feel like I'm in a really awkward situation. Because it's easy to think that kind of when we're talking about these big businesses, we don't necessarily have any power as smaller businesses or individuals, but actually the more people hear things, the more they're likely to take action. So that's something that we can all be doing. So talking and asking questions, and then eventually moving towards making the change, I would say, is the journey to go on.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So doing what feels right, that aligns with you, and raising it to people, your contact in these companies if you are working idle, but really being proactive. I think that's really good advice. So thank you for that, Holly. So we've kind of, at the beginning of this event, we focused more on, explaining that and giving people the information, focusing a bit more on the problems. I'm really keen to pivot and talk about the solutions and really hear from you about Wildlife Heritage Area Programme and the project behind that, the video that we saw just before you came on, and how it's really going to help the travel industry move towards much more responsible wildlife experiences. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm really excited about this initiative. It's been years in the making, and it's brilliant. It launched, I think, about 3 weeks ago now, and we've had loads of people already starting to apply and get involved and offer support. So it's a really exciting time to be talking about it. So Wildlife Heritage Areas was co-founded by World Animal Protection and the World Cetacean Alliance, and World Animal Protection kind of got behind the program because they wanted to offer the travel industry a solution. I think Tenerife was a really brilliant example of saying, well, now you can say, don't go to this park, which we know is not kind to the wildlife, is not necessarily benefiting local people. Instead, why don't you head on to the Wildlife Heritage Area website, and you will see a Tenerife whale area where we'll have a list of a whole load of experiences that have been vetted for how responsible they are. And also we know that they adhere to kind of giving money back to the local community, and stringent animal welfare policies as well. So the whole concept of wildlife heritage areas is really promoting places where local people rally together to protect and celebrate a significant local species. So rather than kind of come up with another certification, because we're aware there's lots out there, we try to design a process that is completely transparent. There's no costs involved, so it's free for people to get involved, and there's an online application form that is really easy and accessible for anyone to get stuck in and apply. And this is because we really wanted all kinds of different communities from all over the world, representing a whole beautiful array of species in wonderful locations to apply. And so to become a wildlife heritage area, this group of local stakeholders upload evidence onto our website that meet criteria that we've come up with. And that criteria spans conservation, responsible tourism, community engagement, and also the last one, which I really love, is cultural expression and celebration. So we're really looking for places that have designed wildlife festivals, maybe kind of sculpture trails, or use local arts and culture to really celebrate nature and our human connection with it. So we've launched about 3 weeks ago. I think we've already got over 10 areas, everything from, we've got a whale heritage area in Santa Barbara in the US to a marcy and bear heritage area in Italy. And we're getting more and more applications coming in all the time. So it's really exciting.
Absolutely, it sounds wonderful, and I couldn't agree with you more, Holly. The cultural celebration and the kind of community element of this is really what excites me about this. Whatever aspect of sustainable travel we're looking at, when the community are part of these initiatives, that's when the exciting things happen. So seeing this with wildlife heritage areas is super great. So I encourage everybody listening to go over, and we're going to share those links out for people to go and take a look. But I'm conscious of time, Holly, but I'd really love to hear briefly what's one of your favourite community-run heritage, wildlife heritage areas.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's hard to pick one, because I feel like this has been such a labour of love. But I personally would love to go to the marcy and bear area in Italy. It's in the Apennines. It's a really wild habitat. It's only 2 hours by train from Rome, which is really exciting to be able to get into such a wilderness and see such an amazing kind of keystone species here in Europe. I think there's only 60 left in the world, so it's a really critical project that they're doing out there to try and protect a bear that is, it is living in to some extent densely populated area, and there are human wildlife conflicts, so it's really interesting hearing about how they're overcoming that. But yeah, we've got heaps of incredible not only species but also the people behind these stories are what I find kind of really inspiring. So we've got 2 monkey areas in the Amazon, and the people who've kind of committed their lives to helping to protect these species is really incredible hearing directly from them. And you can see all of it on the website. There are heaps of videos and stories, and so I definitely recommend going and getting stuck in.
And this is the point, right? When we're talking about, selling or promoting these sustainable travel experiences, it makes sense to start, if you're not sure where to start with, wildlife tourism and talking about positive encounters, natural encounters, which is all what wildlife heritage areas is about, right? It's giving you the resources. And I think that ties quite nicely to my final question, which is how can travel agents, travel businesses, professionals support it? How can they use it?
Sure. And I think that's really true about looking for these positive experiences. And just to add to that, I mean, I think, all these parks and attractions that give visitors this very quick hit thrill of wildlife, but as we've heard from Kathy, and not in a natural way or environment at all. I guess what the wildlife heritage areas do is really give you this incredible in-depth connection with a place beyond the wildlife. So as incredible as it is to see the wildlife, connecting with these people that have spent their whole lives protecting these species, or maybe stumbling upon this cultural experience that's all about our connection with nature that you then might be so excited by. You might think, how can I find something like that closer to home? It's a much richer experience, and so that's what we're really trying to promote. So so I think any agents or anyone selling travel can head over onto the Wildlife Heritage Area website, and we've got a listing page for each Wildlife Heritage Area, and we've designed it so that within this listing page there's anything between kind of like 5 and 15 experiences that you can then click through, and these experiences range from potentially kind of booking a whole holiday to going on like a whale watching trip or going on a guided hike. So I just head on and use that as a source of inspiration. There's loads of information about how to get in touch with the team if anything isn't clear or you'd like more advice on things. And also there's the option to express interest in being kept up to date with the project. You can offer your kind of support as someone who works in the travel industry and wants to champion what we're doing. So please do get in touch if that's appealing. And also, if anyone knows of any communities that you think might be a good wildlife heritage area, please send them a website, and we'd love them to start applying.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to submit one if they're not already part of it. One I met in Slovenia. So yeah, It would be great to do it. Thank you so much, Holly, for your time and for sharing that today. I know it's going to be super useful for so many people. And we really look forward to seeing wildlife heritage areas grow and evolve.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca, for having me.
Stay on to the end if you can. We're going to get to the Q&A very soon. But just before we do, you're going to hear from Rachel and Annika briefly, in which they're going to share their story with you.
So hi everybody, my name's Rachel Treadwell and I'm from a village near Oxford. I've been in business for 4 years now and recently branded to Treadwell Travel. And I wanted to talk to you today about why preparation is key. My experience following on from my sustainable travel training is vastly different to what my experience was like beforehand. I previously sold marine park tickets, and indeed I've taken my children to dolphin and whale shows because I had no idea how detrimental they were to these beautiful animals' health. I now feel really ashamed, but obviously, as we've heard, you don't know until you know. However, now I think it's really important to take steps to be prepared. Firstly, I would say create a wildlife animal policy, welfare animal animal welfare policy, sorry. And it's much easier than you think. I did mine with Rebecca as part of her online training. And then, obviously, once you've created it, you need to publish it, put it on your website, talk about it to everybody, get them to read it, put it in your email signature, anywhere that you can point people to. And then lastly, I'd say it's important to have something up your sleeve ready for when you're asked these questions by clients so that you know what to say. After doing Rebecca's course, I had an inquiry for a client who booked an MSC cruise. That it was earlier this year, and he was going on this MSC cruise, and he contacted me and wanted me to book him a dolphin experience or an excursion that included dolphin show. Prior to doing the course, I'd have just said, gone ahead and booked it. But instead, I actually said to him that I'm really sorry, I couldn't do that. I wouldn't do that because of everything I'd learned. And I told him all the facts about what I'd learned. And he was really quite blown away by it, actually. He had no idea himself. So I think the big key message there is don't worry about disappointing your clients. You won't be. I think they're generally grateful that you point that out because they do want to do the right thing. They're just not aware that they're doing such a harmful activity. And I think by doing that, it shows that you've got high integrity and ethics, and it makes your business stand out from the rest. And doing the right thing is great, and it isn't just about making more money. So I'd now like to pass on to Annika.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi everyone, my name is Annika and I'm based in Newbury, Berkshire, and I've been running my travel business for 3 years. Last month I rebranded in order to focus more on specialities like sustainable travel. So today I'd like to talk about going beyond the animal welfare policy. I created my animal welfare policy during Rebecca's online course using World Animal Protection's template, so it was super easy. And I have to say it was such a key pivotal step in my travel business. Simply by having a policy as an independent agent, my business stood out and became more visibly aligned with my personal values and passions, which in turn made me more credible. If people ever asked me about experiences I wasn't comfortable with, or even if I knew they were going somewhere that was high risk for being sold encounters on site, having something ready to go and worded correctly gave me the confidence to say something to people there and then. It not only set out what I would or wouldn't sell and why, but also gave clients with an interest in this area the tools to make their own informed decisions while away. Previously, it was so much more difficult to have these conversations on the spot and to take the right tone. Knowing your own mind about what is a red line for you and your business is a first step. Having an animal welfare policy, the next key tool. But if we really want to drive change in this arena, we need as many travel professionals as possible to raise awareness and educate people both outside and inside the industry. By putting our heads above the parapet and speaking out to our suppliers, we can hopefully turn the tide on this captive cruelty. That's why this year I went beyond my animal welfare policy and supported the No Tanks TUI campaign on social media. I've spoken to and called out supplier contacts, got involved in events like today, and joined the Kawano travel community where we support each other to drive meaningful change. We have such power and influence within the trade as a collection of travel businesses, and we simply need to tap into that to make change happen and bring a better future for wildlife. Voting with ours and our customers' wallets and making our voices heard as to what we will and won't promote is such a powerful tool. So thank you for joining today. Hopefully this is just the first step for all of us to work together and make meaningful change within our wonderful industry.
Thank you very much to Rachel and Annika there. Just before we come on to the questions, guys, because there's so many good ones and I'm just trying to jot them down, so stay on as you can. I'm just going to jump to a part that Kathy would really like to share with you about how you can get involved in taking action.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm going to put a link into the chat now, but I just wanted to introduce the action quickly. So we would love your help to continue asking TUI to stop selling and promoting dolphin venues. Hopefully, you've seen how the issues in dolphin captivity and TUI really are such a big player in this area that their support would be make a big difference. And all of you here have a huge amount of power when it comes to TUI. it's been reported more than once recently that they are really focused on independent travel agents and trying to encourage independent travel agents to work with them, which gives you loads of power as such a valuable stakeholder for them and puts you in a great position to ask those pertinent questions. So if you, I'll put the action in the chat. It's basically an online letter um, to the managing director and the commercial director of TUI UK. And we would love you to write your name and your company name on there. It's an open letter, which when we've got a number of signatures, we will send to them.
So let's go to the Q&A. Thank you for everybody that's continued to stay as we're running into 10 minutes over. Really appreciate that. But I know there's some great questions that we're going to share with you now. So Kathy, maybe you can help me. I've seen one here from Lucy Hood. Now, this isn't about the marine parks, but that's okay because we're talking about wildlife tourism in general. She's asking about whether there's such a thing as ethical elephant sanctuaries, and which one should she align with, especially for Thailand, because she wants to do the right thing, but she's not quite sure whether ethical sanctuaries, elephant sanctuaries, even exist.
Yeah, that's a great question. I put further down in the chat, I've just added a link to the World Animal Protection website where there's a list of venues that scored well in our last report on elephants used in tourism in Asia. Thailand's obviously the main country for elephant tourism, and we've been working in that area for well over 10 years now. We've got 2 reports where we've looked at the welfare issues in different venues. So the main thing you need to look out for, I mean, I could talk about elephants for another hour, so I'm just going to really quickly say the main things to look out for is if you can ride, wash, bathe, touch, get a photo, like holding an elephant's trunk, anything where there's close contact, avoid. Basically, because they're such huge, powerful animals, if they are in such close proximity to tourists, then the handlers need to have an element of control to stop the tourists being injured. I mean, having said that, I don't know if you saw the news recently of the 2, I think it was in India, where the elephant threw off 2 of their riders and the handler as well. So definitely quite a dangerous thing to take part in. But yeah, so if you can touch, hug, ride, bathe, avoid it. There are I mean, the best way to see elephants is always going to be in the wild, but there are some genuine sanctuaries that are doing their best to sort of bridge that gap between elephant riding camps, washing camps, and because there's a lot of there's a lot of elephants already stuck in the industry. So basically, you want to look for ones that are observation only. We work with 2 venues in Thailand, Changchil and Following Giants. And those are both observation only models that we've worked with the venues to show that there is a model for responsible elephant venues. I say that again, like obviously, ultimately, you want to be seeing them in the wild. And I think again, it's a bit of a journey. I think venues are moving away from uh, riding and bathing now. There are a few more now that are moving towards observation only, and you'll find those on our website. Other things to look out for is if there's baby elephants, especially if they're not with their mother, again, avoid, because they shouldn't be breeding the elephants within the industry, because it's the same thing with dolphins. They're just breeding more and more animals into the industry, and it creates a much bigger problem that needs solving.
Why is it that SeaWorld gets so much stick when we have Disney and other hotels and parks that are profiting from captive wildlife? Why is it that SeaWorld gets so much focus?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably wouldn't even know Disney had dolphins. They're tucked away in Epcot Center. I think SeaWorld gets most of the attention because they are set up as a marine park. Their primary focus is around dolphins and orcas. I would say they're reading a piece about their Christmas events yesterday, it didn't even mention dolphins or orcas, which I thought was bizarre. And at last year's World Travel Market, all of their promotional material was about roller coasters, which again didn't even mention the dolphins and orcas that are suffering in captivity for the park to exploit. So yeah, so if you buy a ticket to SeaWorld, basically you can see the dolphins and orcas. The shows are part and parcel. Disney, absolutely still unacceptable. They have 3 dolphins there in captivity that I believe you can swim with. It isn't added on, it's an extra. So ultimately, we don't want any dolphins in captivity. But I think SeaWorld probably draws more attention just because they are, yeah, their whole vision is the sea. SeaWorld is they could easily do a park that's like roller coasters and education about the ocean and the marine life without the dolphins and the orcas.
Thank you so much for being here. We're going to clock off and have a great rest of your afternoon, and we will share the recording with you if you would like to see any aspect again. Thank you, everybody.